Hi, I'm Mike Lynch, and today's video is going to be all about fats. Welcome to part 3. Today I'm going to teach you everything about fats. But before we start, let me just tell you a quick story, something I experienced early in my career. Actually, it was right before I became a personal trainer full-time. So I obviously grew up in the 80s and got into fitness in the early 90s. And at that point in time, the low-fat movement was at an all-time high, and we were consuming a lot of carbohydrates. I'm an A-type personality, and I knew the benefits of eating healthy. So what I did was, what many people did back then, is I reduced my fats really, really low. And I'll leave names out, but I got into great shape from a body fat standpoint. But within about a year, my health really suffered. And I was a young guy at the time. My skin looked awful, but more importantly, was exercising at the time. And I noticed that within 6 months, 7 months, I started to get a lot of pain in my knees. And like I said, I'm gonna leave a name out, but I actually went to a well-known orthopedic here in the New York area, and he was an orthopedic for a very popular sports team, and basically never really asked me anything about my diet. Did some MRIs on my knees, and there was no tears, no meniscal tears or anything like that, but he said, we're gonna go in and do a cleaning. And I basically had arthroscopic surgery on both knees. And after the surgery was done, I went back, and this gentleman asked me, how are the knees feeling? And I said, you know, doc, they're feeling just as bad as ever. The surgery did nothing, basically. And then obviously, the importance of fats started to get popular. Now we know the benefits. A lot of people, I think, know the benefits, but there's still there's a black cloud over fats still. And we're gonna discuss that today, but fats were still not really, the benefits of fats were not known at that point, but I had dove into the research, and within 6 months to a year of learning about the benefits of fat and the dangers of reducing fat, my skin had radically improved, and a lot of other things really started to thrive in my body, and my knee pain just pretty much vanished. So here I was in the beginning of my personal training career, trying to be as healthy as possible, and I got myself 2 knee surgeries that I didn't need. And look, that doctor was a great doctor, and he was the doctor of that sports team for a reason. He just probably didn't have the knowledge of nutrition, and a lot of people didn't back then as far as fats go. So at a very young age, I had 2 knee surgeries that I didn't need. So it just goes to show you that we can run into a lot of problems by taking food groups out. So let's get into the fats. Okay, so let's start with fats and how they are divvied up. And basically you have 3 different types of fats. You have monounsaturated fats, you have polyunsaturated fats, and saturated fats. Now, I'm gonna show you some of the fats that I advocate for my clients and I use currently myself, and then we'll get into the benefits, and then wouldn't be a Mike Lynch video if we didn't do the myths and misconceptions in regards to fat. So I did 6 of them. The list is long, but I did 6 that you probably have read or heard. So without any further ado, let's get into the fats. Okay, so let's get into the fats that I use and advocate for my clients. As I run through these fats, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about them. Some of the things that you may have heard or read on TV could be damaging your health or your results. So we'll do the myths at the end, but as I talk about these fats, I'm gonna run through different things that you may wanna avoid. Okay, so let's start off with olive oil. Everybody knows about the benefits of olive oil. There's a lot of people that on TV especially have you just putting EVOO all over your stuff because it's healthy. You don't wanna do that. Here's the reason why. Yes, monounsaturated fats in olive oil are extremely healthy for a myriad of different things in the body, especially your hair, blood sugar, your skin health. They're very high in monounsaturated fats. Okay, there's a little bit of polyunsaturated fats, but mainly monounsaturated fats. You just don't want to pour oil all over your food. You do have to be mindful of how much you use, and it's going to be different for everybody, but calories are not calories. And we talked about in video 1. Food is measured like drugs in grams. Protein and carbohydrates have 4 calories. per gram. Fats have 9, so they're almost triple the amount of calories. So if you just pour oil all over your food because it's healthy and somebody told you to do that, you're gonna be putting tons and tons of calories on your food. Problem number one. Problem number two, and this could cause cancer and oxidative stress in the body, is monounsaturated fats like olive oil are not to be used for cooking. Mind blowing, right? And everybody's like, oh, well, I cook with olive oil all the time. So that doesn't mean it's right. If you look at quality olive oil, first of all, it should be in an opaque jar like this. If it's in a clear glass bottle, don't buy it because the sun is gonna oxidize it. So what does oxidize mean? It means, like, I remember the old paint jobs on a car. If you're that old, paint jobs don't really oxidize anymore, but anybody my age, the paint on cars sometimes would flake, or crust on bread. This is oxidation, it's called glycation, and we don't want things to oxidize in our bodies, especially fats. So when you put monounsaturated fats to heat, they become hydrogenized. Okay, if you look at quality olive oil, it says cold pressed on the front. They actually press it with cold instruments, so this way it doesn't get heated and oxidized, and they put it in an opaque jar, so this way it doesn't get oxidized by the light. So now you have a high hot pan and you're throwing that olive oil to saute your vegetables. Yeah, it tastes delicious, but you're oxidizing that monounsaturated fat and turning it into a hydrogenated fat, which is cancer causing. So if you're going to use olive oil, use it after you saute your food, okay, and we'll talk about what to saute it in, or add it to raw vegetables and or salads, okay? So no high heat cooking with olive oil. Now, if you turn your food down to a low simmer and you add it at the end and just mix it in and take it off, that's cool. But again, we wanna be mindful of how much fat we use in our food, but we also don't wanna cook with monounsaturated fats, okay? So then the next is obviously gonna be olives, and olives are great. I actually love olives more than I do olive oil because you're taking the food, essentially olive oil is an extract of olives. I always love nutrition in its original state. So olives are gonna be the way to go, for me at least, but you can use both. Then we get into vegetable oils. And most vegetable oils are gonna be really high in omega-6s, and that's gonna be safflower oil and sunflower oil, and there's a myriad of them, and you, for the most part, should kind of stay away from those. One thing is, for people that don't like olive oil, there's what's called high oleic safflower oil, and it's very, very high in monounsaturated fats. In fact, it's got higher monounsaturated fats than olive oil. So if you hate olive oil or you're allergic to it and you want another alternative, safflower oil is a great way to go, but it's gotta be high oleic. Then we get into our cooking fats, and fats that you can spread on vegetables or toast or what diet you're on, okay? Obviously you won't be using toast if you're on a low carb diet, but obviously in the last few years everybody knows about the benefits of coconut oil. It's an MCT, which is a medium chain triglyceride, and it burns almost like sugar, but it doesn't raise your blood sugar. So it can give you immediate energy, almost like sugar would, and there's no insulin response. So a good oil, if you like the taste of coconut, they make some coconut oils that don't have as strong of a coconut taste, but definitely a good oil to use, especially for cooking. Very high flash point, it doesn't oxidize, but it is 100% saturated fats, okay? Then we get into grass-fed butters, okay? So we have grass-fed butter here, and that's gonna be from cows that were grass-fed. So the fatty acid profile would be better in this, and it's totally delicious. Again, saturated fats, high flash point, good for cooking. Okay, and then for people that have certain dairy allergies, we have ghee, which is clarified butter, and it's free of casein and lactose. So if you have problems with butter, you may want to try ghee. It's got a creamier texture. It doesn't get rock hard like butter does. A bit of a different taste too, and they're both delicious. So saturated fat, good for cooking. Also good on food, it's delicious. I actually love this. Ooh, these two are my favorite. I'm not really a coconut oil fan, but other people in my family are. Okay, so then we get into the nuts, nut butters, okay? And obviously there's different various nut butters. You have peanut butter, been around forever, almond butter, they have macadamia nut butter, cashew butter, you name it. There's all different nut butters. The one caveat with this is obviously it's very easy to eat, so you want to watch your serving sizes. And peanuts do tend to, they grow a mold on it, mycotoxins. So the lowest variety in these mycotoxins are Valencia peanuts. And I tell everybody, look, you know, when it comes to organic, some things can be very expensive, but if you're gonna eat peanut butter, spend the extra $1 and get organic peanut butter. Because of that mold, it will reduce it somewhat, but it's still there. But peanut butter is one of my favorite fats. It works really well, stabilizes my blood sugar. I could go hours and hours and hours with a protein shake and some peanut butter. Really gets me through my sessions with my clients, and my blood sugar, it stays beautifully even. This is like a power food for me. Okay, avocados. Obviously everybody knows the benefits of avocados. Again, like these monounsaturated fats, don't really want to cook those either. I don't know anybody cooks avocado, but obviously some people spread it on toast, and obviously it would be phenomenal in salads, eggs, and stuff like that. But again, if you're gonna put it in your omelet, maybe add it at the end, so this way you're not damaging those monounsaturated fats, but loaded with fiber, loaded with potassium, super delicious. And lastly, we have nuts, and obviously all nuts are good. I wouldn't eat a ton of peanuts, and in general, I wouldn't eat a ton of nuts anyway. Nuts should be like a handful or two a day. They should garnish the food for a couple of different reasons. One, they're really, really, really easy to overconsume. If somebody has portion control problems, I never put nuts in their food plan until they remedy that problem, because it's just easy to keep on doing this, and at 9 calories per gram, it adds up quick. Also too, nuts, except walnuts, are very high in omega-6s. So we talked about that in the protein video, that we don't want high amounts of omega-6s. So there's, walnuts are high in omega-3s, but we definitely want to keep nuts moderate, but all nuts have benefits. What one nut has, the other nut doesn't have. So we have Brazil nuts here, macadamia nuts, really, really high in monounsaturated fats, very good for raising testosterone levels, and both men and women want testosterone. So these are the fats that I advocate. Hopefully you've learned something from this. And obviously we discussed this in the protein, we have protein video, we have fats, natural occurring fats in protein as well. So you have to be mindful with fat, because there is some fat in the proteins you're eating, and obviously a chicken breast is gonna have less than a chicken thigh, but there are beneficial fats within those foods, and it's not all saturated fat. When people talk about, like, the people that will fear monger protein and be like, oh, it's too much saturated fat. First off, you need saturated fat. We're gonna get into that in the myths part of this video. But some of that fat is actually monounsaturated fat if you look at the packaging on your protein. So, you know, you are getting the monounsaturated fats and some of the saturated fats when you eat animal flesh. And obviously this will be a sliding scale depending on whether it's cold water fish or grass-fed beef or, you know, a regular turkey burger or whatever it is. So here's the deal on fats. They're all delicious, and we'll talk about some of the benefits in the misconception portion. So hopefully this answers any question you had about fats. They're delicious, they're nutritious, and they smooth everything out. So eat your fat. Okay, so there's a lot of myths in regards to fat, but we'll talk about the 6 major ones that you may have read or heard. Okay, so let's start with number 1. And this has died off a little bit. In fact, a lot of people have totally gone the opposite way in regards to diets like the keto diet, and we'll get into that in one of the other myths. But this idea, because a lot of people still believe this, that fat gets you fat. And that is wrong. What gets us fat is inactivity, processed foods, and the lack of exercise for the most part. And there's other mechanisms that we won't get into in this video, but that's what gets us fat. Now, there's a bit of truth to the whole fat gets you fat, and let's talk about it. How is that, or how did that come about? And for the most part, it's gonna be the calorie load that fat has, okay? But there's a lot of things that fats do, or that they don't do, and we'll get into that helps with fat loss. So calories are measured in grams, and like I said before, protein and carbohydrates have 4 calories, where fat have 9. So almost triple the amount of calories. So the calories do add up quickly. And at the end of the day, regardless of what other diet schemes may have told you, at the end of the day, if you eat too many calories, you're gonna get fat. Plain and simple. So fat does not get you fat, but its calorie load is almost triple that of protein and carbohydrates. So it doesn't get you fat. Myth number one is totally wrong. Okay, myth number two is kind of cousins to number one. And there was this vegan doctor, look, if you're a vegan, I totally support that. I'm personally not one, but you can be completely healthy on a properly formed vegan diet with the right supplementation. But there was one vegan diet doctor, and he was really popular on YouTube. I think he kind of burned out a little bit. And he had this saying, the fat that you eat is the fat that you wear. And what that means, if you eat a lot of fat, or you eat fat, because he advocates a really low fat diet, that you're gonna store this body fat. You know, when he would say that, he'd point to his abdominal area. And that's wrong. That's wrong. There's really high fat diets that make people drop a ton of weight. I don't necessarily think that it's the healthiest avenue to take, but this idea that if you eat dietary fat, that it's gonna magically lodge itself in your abdominals and women, predominantly their hips, is ridiculous, it's erroneous, it's made up, it's a fallacy. So it's kind of cousins to number one, but different, because it insinuates that if you ingest this, boom, it's going right into the wrong areas. So myth number two, BS. Okay, myth number three is gonna be a repeat of what we kind of touched on before, but I'll go into a little bit more detail because this is something that almost every household does, and people are really mind blown and taken back when I tell them this, and it's gonna be cooking with things like olive oil. Okay, and I know this is a repeat from before, but it's worth it, because a lot of times I tell people that and they kind of just like, they discount it because they're like, can he be right? My grandmother did that, my grandmother's mother did that. But monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats are very, very heat sensitive and light sensitive. And when you heat them, you break down their molecules and they become hydrogenized. And hydrogenated fat, as we know from packaged foods and candy and all this garbage that you don't want to put in your body 99.9% of the time, you're actually taking these beautiful oils that are really healthy for you and you're turning them into damaged fats, and you're actually making them rancid. And then they go into your body and they cause a myriad of problems. It could cause, you know, you might not die from it like tomorrow, when you won't, but it's a cumulative type of thing. And you know, if you're somebody who suffers from a lot of body aches and joint discomfort and stuff like that, there's other things that obviously can lend their hand to these unfortunate feelings of body aches and stuff like that. But you may not have to look any further than the fats that you're cooking with, because you're damaging them. So again, you want to use those saturated fats because they have a high flash point. So I know that this is mind-blowing. I'm sorry to the TV personalities that pour olive oil all over their cooking shows, but it's the truth. So if you want complete health, do not cook with delicate oils like monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat, ever. Okay, myth number four is going to be that if you want to be healthy and live a long life, you have to remove all the saturated fat out of your diet. Completely wrong. Now, is it a good idea to just eat as much fat as you want? No, of any type of fat. And some diets, popular diets now, do advocate that. So, you know, it's so screwed up. Sorry, it's screwed up how the fitness industry and the nutrition industry really damages the consumer's health. Think about it. We go from, you remove every fat out of your diet completely, like I talked about in the 80s and 90s, and now we have diets like the keto diet. Sorry, keto people, I want you to think about these things. And I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm actually here to help you and open your mind to the thought. Like, we have these diets where they have people waking up in the morning and dumping MCT oil and coconut oil and burring and blending up butter into their coffee. First off, to me, that sounds disgusting anyway. But ask yourself a question, because you know, these same people will talk, we need to eat the way our ancestors ate. Do you think hunters and gatherers got up in the morning and had, first off, most people didn't have access to coconut oil unless you lived in the tropics. Sorry. See, common sense. When you say that, people are like, oh yeah, maybe he's right. And do you think that they had access to all this butter and started blending it up in their morning coffee? Probably not. So if you're doing that, then I gotta tell you something. there might be a bad story down the road for you. But going the other way and removing all saturated fat is equally as damaging, because we need saturated fat for hormone production in the body. So, whether you're a woman or a man, things happen to women as they get older, and things happen to men as they get older when it comes to sex. Because hormones, there's a thing in your body called sex hormones, and they kind of get like they lose their luster as we get older. If you want to speed that process up, remove all the saturated fat out of your diet, because saturated fat is very important for these hormones in the body. So some saturated fat, and there's some arguments for the people that know what they're talking about, how much it should be, probably about a third, maybe a little less if you've had heart issues, of overall fat consumption. So if you're having, 60 grams of fat for the day, let's say, about a third of that should maybe come from some healthy saturated forms. So you do not have to remove all saturated fat out of your diet. Okay, number 5 is gonna be cousins to number 4. And that's gonna be because when we talk about saturated fat, no one talks about saturated fat without talking about cholesterol. So a lot of diets, or people that are advocating certain diets, tell you that you need to take all the cholesterol out of your diet, that eating dietary cholesterol, because they're two different things, right? Cholesterol in your body and dietary cholesterol are different. That you need to remove all of these to avoid things like a heart attack and extending life. And this, again, is wrong. Here's the reason why. Your body actually makes about 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of cholesterol per day. And when you eat dietary cholesterol, your body actually downregulates how much cholesterol it actually produces by the liver. So we need cholesterol for a myriad of different things. And again, very important for that hormone production, because look, cell death, and that's where we're just a bunch of cells, is going to be really accelerated by if you lower hormones in the body. And cholesterol and saturated fat are some of the very things that we need for hormone health. So reducing the amount of dietary cholesterol you have. Now, when you go and get your cholesterol done, people will sometimes they'll see a drop in their cholesterol numbers. But there's two things to that. If you keep on doing that, your body is going to overcompensate and start to produce more dietary cholesterol from the liver in the long run. But also, what is that cholesterol doing? And this is what's being now talked about a little bit with people that actually know what they're doing, but it's kind of glossed over by 95% of the gurus out there, okay, advocating these unhealthy way of eating. We have to look at what is the cholesterol doing, and there's more and more tests coming out to actually test for that. Is the cholesterol becoming oxidized? Is it glycating in the body? And that's pretty much like getting sticky and sticking to the arterial walls and building up large deposits and making your arteries smaller. And obviously there's other things with triglycerides, the viscosity of the blood gets thick, and then we run into a problem where the heart has to work much harder to pump the blood throughout your body, okay, because your body's an open chain, and the blood comes in your heart, out your heart, and back. It's like a racetrack, okay? So if things are narrow and blood is thick, it makes things really challenging, and then that's when we can run into a problem. So if somebody has high oxidation in their body or high insulin levels due to eating way too many carbohydrates, then that cholesterol can become oxidized and turn into plaque, and then this is when we have a problem. So do you run out and eat a ton of cholesterol? No. Should you be mindful and eat all the cholesterol you want to raise hormones? No. But again, the fitness industry and the diet industry go from here to here, and there's no here. And that's where most of us should be with a lot of things in our lives, right about here. And it's gonna slide back and forth, whoever that person is, whether they're 20-year-olds or 80-year-olds, whether they're marathon runners or power lifters or sedentary and don't exercise at all. And this is what it's about: quality, tailored nutrition to you and knowing what you're doing. So taking dietary cholesterol completely out of your diet, in my opinion, is a bad idea for most people. Okay, number 6 is gonna be a trendy one, okay? I'm gonna get a little bit deep on this one, but we talked about protein in the last one, and that was trends. So if you want to stay healthy, you want to stay fit, stay away from trends, because I got to tell you something. I believe in my heart of hearts, there's either just a ton of confused people, and I want that to be the truth, but there's another part of me that uses logic and says, why is the information always so contradictory and always changing? And I believe like the fitness industry doesn't want you to get in shape, because if you get in shape, you won't buy their vitamins or their supplements or the antioxidant or all this nonsense, right? So right now, the hero of the day is the ketogenic diet. And this is gonna be myth number 6. The myth is, and you may have read this, and I hope you're not following it. If you are, rethink it, please, if you care about your health. You can eat as much fat as you want as long as you keep your insulin levels low. Okay, because insulin is predominantly, and it's spiked by protein. I could do a 5-hour video on this, but carbohydrates spike insulin the most. And insulin is a storage hormone. We'll get into that in the carbohydrate video. So the theory is if you keep insulin low, because insulin shuttles things into your cells to keep it simple. And if you keep your insulin levels really, really low from low carbohydrate intake, that you can eat as much fat as you want because the fat won't go into the cells, the fat cells. It's real hard to get fat to go into muscle cells. And if you're athletic, you have to think that right away. And how's that gonna affect your performance? So, this idea that you can eat as much, it's not calories. We've been wrong all this time. You can eat as many calories as you want. It's insulin's fault. The pancreas that our creator gave us, he put it in there to screw with us, right? Like, we're not supposed to produce any insulin. We keep carbohydrates totally down, 5 grams, 20 grams, 30 grams a day. And if we do that, then we can eat all the fat we want. We can put butter in our coffee and coconut oil and just slather avocados all over the place and eat as many whole eggs as we want. It's crazy, it's nuts, and it's downright dangerous. Okay, so you cannot eat as much fat as you want as long as you keep your insulin levels low. Now, you will reach, if you eat a lot of fat, you will reach nausea because there's certain hormones that are produced. But there's a lot of people that can eat a lot of fat, and we can see this through the obesity, all right? I doubt those people are just sitting and eating, a bunch of baked potatoes plain and too much brown rice and too much broccoli, okay? They're eating fat as well. So you will get to the point if you eat a ton of fat that you'll get nauseous, and there's certain enzymes that do this for us, but a lot of times it's too late. So I'm sorry if you're following the ketogenic diet. I'm not here to piss anybody off. And look, I find the good and bad in every single diet and every single training system. But if you're following a diet because we're in 2020 right now, and this is what's hot right now, the keto diet, and it's nothing new. It's just a repackaged Atkins diet. And oh, by the way, Dr. Atkins didn't come up with it. There was a diet before that called the anabolic diet. There was a high-fat diet coupled with carbohydrates in cycles. And that was actually a better one because it knew the benefits of carbohydrate cycling to avoid things like slowed pituitary gland and thyroid function. But that's another video. So this idea that you can eat as much dietary fat as you want as long as you keep your carbohydrates low is a real recipe for you never have a great physique, to have a real boring diet. I mean, who wants to you have to count your vegetables on a ketogenic diet. You have to count your vegetables. Could that be healthy? I don't think so. And if you do think it's healthy and you're seeing health, then who am I to say? But just because you get healthy doesn't mean that it's healthy. Does that make sense? Because if you lose weight and you feel healthy because you've lost weight, doesn't mean that you're healthy. Because right now, I can get myself a nice cocaine habit and I won't want to eat food at all. And I will lose a ton of weight, but I'll probably be dead or broke or the both. So again, don't just consume as much fat as you want because you're on a low carb diet and some moron told you that it's the way to go. We need protein, fats, and carbohydrates, and it's going to vary in every person. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video on fat. I know some of it was controversial. I hope some of it has opened your eyes on things you may have done that could be stacking the cards against you and create problems down the road. So nutrition is a very specific thing, but remember, all the foods that we get to enjoy are here for a reason. This is about being healthy, being satisfied, being well nourished, having a lot of energy, and also having a body that you feel comfortable being in a bikini or a bathing suit and wearing the clothes that you love the most. So this is my video on fats, and we're gonna save carbohydrates for the last one because that one, carbohydrates are totally, there's 3 different groups, and that has been vilified like you would not believe. So thank you for watching this video on fats, and I will see you in the carbohydrate video. Bye-bye.